The dynamic island on iPhone 14 Pro Max is nothing innovative or revolutionary. It's just a poor, lackluster, pathetic version of the notification bar that Samsung and most other Android phones have already had for over half a decade now. I saw this promo post by Apple on Reddit about a week after the phone was revealed, and it truly baffles me how Apple is actually promoting their new dynamic island as a multitasking experience. Like, what? The dynamic island doesn't allow the user to multitask on the phone in any sort of way. Using the dynamic island to check notifications or control activities like music, phone calls, timer, voice recorder, etc., without having to leave whatever current screen you're on is not multitasking. That's just something so simple that pretty much any modern day smartphone should be able to and is able to do. Here's a screen recording of my Galaxy Z Fold 4 to demonstrate what multitasking on a smartphone actually is and actually looks like. I first have one app open, but unlike any iPhone, the Z Fold 4 is able to open up a second app, which can be resized and rearranged to be on the left, right, top, or bottom of the screen. The Fold 4 can even open up a third app, which can also be configured the same ways the other two apps can be. Then, if I want to take the multitasking even further, I can open up multiple other apps as pop-up windows, which can be resized and moved around anywhere on the screen. When I no longer need them at the moment, they are all able to be minimized and will sit collectively as a small pop-up bubble, which can also be moved anywhere on the screen. So with the Galaxy Z Fold 4 and most other modern-day Samsung phones, I can have two different apps of my choice open simultaneously, or 3 if it's a Galaxy Z Fold phone. Then I can also have up to 8 other apps of my choice available simultaneously as pop-up bubbles, which can be expanded and minimized with just a tap. This is multitasking. This is not multitasking. Not in the slightest. There's nothing head-turning or game-changing either. If I saw the dynamic island in action in person, I certainly wouldn't be turning my head, trying to see more or get a better look. It's a small animated piece of software. What's honestly so jaw-dropping or game-changing about that? Every single time anyone uses a smartphone, the software on the operating system is being animated whenever the user is doing basic things like tapping on things or scrolling through something. It's just a poor, lackluster, pathetic version of the status bar that are on Samsung Galaxy phones, as well as almost every other Android phone. Unfortunately, as usual, all the iSheep are blindly and mindlessly falling victim to Apple's deceitful and manipulative advertising. I say it's poor, lackluster, and pathetic because while Apple's dynamic island is only able to show 2 alerts, /notifications, /activities at a single time, it only takes one finger swipe down on a Samsung phone to show the notification bar and have all current alerts, notifications, and activities shown at once. Then one finger swipe up completely conceals all those alerts, notifications, and activities, giving the user a pretty much full and uninterrupted screen on traditional Samsung phones. On the Galaxy Z Fold 4, the notification panel being able to be hidden away truly does give the user a full and uninterrupted screen, due to the front camera being hidden underneath the display. Whereas on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, whatever you have on the dynamic island can't be hidden or concealed. And even if there aren't any alerts, notifications, or activities in the dynamic island, the now smaller notch holding the front camera and Face ID hardware is still there as a hideous, ugly eyesore, being intrusive and taking up space. The dynamic island being an interactive status bar is just a gimmick, workaround, and excuse for Apple having not done away with the notch. Unfortunately, iSheeps believe that any feature Apple finally implements onto their devices and advertises as being new is actually new and will put it on a pedestal. From what I've seen, a majority of iSheeps are glorifying it and actually think it's some groundbreaking feature that hasn't been done before on a smartphone. Though thankfully, also from what I've seen, Most of the people who aren't blinded by Apple's manipulative marketing have seen right through the BS and have been down-talking it, calling it out for what it is, a dynamic dud. I personally think the most hilarious and embarrassing thing about the dynamic island is how much Apple has hyped it up as being some astounding feature that only the iPhone 14 Pro Max has, only for low to mid-budget software developers to copy it and make it available for pretty much any modern-day Android phone within 2 weeks after the iPhone 14 Pro Max was revealed. It must suck for Apple right now, seeing how easy it was for third-party software developers to make apps that place an animated piece of software at the top of a phone screen to directly replicate the dynamic island and all its functionality. My mentions of software developers whipping up their own versions of Dynamic Island and people calling it out for being a pathetic gimmick is actually a good way for me to segue into this comment I recently came across on Reddit. OP wanted to know if there's any type of way to get the Dynamic Island on the Z Fold 4, and I'll let some of the replies to the question be what caps off this video.
We don't do notches here. Why would you want an island when you got a huge ocean? I mean, the idea of a screen is to get as much screen as possible. Samsung even managed to hide the camera hole, but now Apple is so good as to get people to want nonsense. Do you realize you're looking into purposely adding a hole or a black bar on your screen? After an entire year to cook up something, their primary offering was a screen animation with a horrendous name attached to it. Maybe the name equals is so bad it's good theory, IDK. But to come out with an animation and fans go wild for it is baffling. Who needs an island when you have all that real estate? No. Just no. Good luck with the island when playing games, watching movies, YouTube, reading a book, or even multitasking. That island is a gimmick for all the idiots out there. Dynamic Island is no different to persistent notifications and floating apps, which are already far more usable and exist on the Fold 4 than Apple's gimmick. They literally took Android's pop-up bubbles, placed it where Apple's ugly notch is, and called it dynamic. That's like a barber screwing up your haircut and calling it a dynamic haircut. And, alas, a mindless, brainwashed Apple fan saw this last comment I just read, and this was his reply to it. As an Apple fan, I would gladly pay a premium for a dynamic haircut.